And that's the way you approach ranked choice voting. You can't outsmart ranked choice voting. Like, vote for your favorite candidate.
We're not
first.
at the end of the episode yet, Josh. What are you saying? We're saving the secrets to outsmarting ranked choice voting for the very end. Okay. That's my final question, and you all have answers prepared, right?
You're gonna end the show, and then you're gonna wait to see who stays on for the next 30 seconds, and then we're gonna have the actual secret.
Yeah, just keep listening, everyone. Keep listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing. None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
We are back on the Wedge Live podcast, and there's no place in the world I would rather be than with Todd Schuman and Josh Martin on a Friday night talking about ranked choice voting.
This is what I would be doing anyways. This did not,
This is your idea, Todd. You forced us to be here. I'm like, is it really that complicated? We did one of these a couple of years ago explaining ranked choice voting, and I feel like what is to be confused about? Because it literally is just rank your choices in order of preference, right? Does it need to be any more complicated than that?
It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. And that's sort of the message of what we're doing here tonight, is just make it clear that there isn't a bunch of crazy calculations and things going on in the background here. It's really as straightforward as just rank your preferences, your honest preferences for these elections.
What if I rank the same candidate 3 times? I know there's a lot of RCV truthers out there who believe there are ways to game the system, and sometimes I fall into this category. I believe that people like you and Josh are hiding the secrets. If I bubble in super hard the same candidate all 3 times, can I fool the machine into counting me a little bit more than other people?
I wish that were true. I wish I had that kind of secret to share with you today. But the answer is no, and in fact, you'll probably be doing yourself a disservice because it just won't. You won't be expressing the full preference of your vote. You can do that. It's just they'll only count your vote once, and you won't get to express any other preferences you have beyond your first choice.
You know what I did in Ward 10 this year? Because I really only find that there's one acceptable candidate. I just voted for my first choice, Aisha Chugtai. Didn't fill out the rest of my choices, even though there are 3 candidates. One of them is definitely not plausible as a candidate, and then the other one is just so hostile to my way of life, and I didn't vote for either of them. Is that a fine way to cast my ballot?
It's totally fine. You want to rank up until the point where you don't have an opinion between any of the candidates that are left. And so if there's only one person in that race that you want to see elected, and you either don't think the others have a chance, or you really think they're equally terrible after that, then that is totally fine.
Todd, what is your qualification to be talking about this? Everyone knows Josh Martin is master of spreadsheets, so of course he's qualified. But Todd, why are you qualified to talk about this?
Well, I like to consider myself a ranked choice voting advocate or enthusiast. I was introduced to the voting system in college. We actually use this for our student council elections. And ever since then, I've been really impressed by the ability it gives people to express more nuance in their voting preferences. So rather than just having to say, this is my top choice, it actually gives people the power to say a little bit more about, well, I like this person the best, but if I can't have this person, I would like this person second. And if that person's not available, I'd like this person third. And so it gives people more opportunities to share their voice about which people they want representing them in government.
I've been trying to think of scenarios where it's maybe not as simple as rank your people in order of preference. And so I'm going to give you, and you can both weigh in on this and tell me what you think. The case of a soft fry voter. Let's say I'm a moderate and I am deeply afraid of Omar Fateh and the DSA, and the war on socialism rhetoric has really gotten to me, and I never leave my home, and I just stay inside all the time. But I am leaving home to do my ranked choice voting. And I'm thinking Fry can't get to a majority. I'm worried about that. And the second person in Minneapolis who's most likely to win is Fate. And so is it reasonable for that person to say, since Fry is not going to get second and third choices in large numbers, is it reasonable for me to rank Dwayne Davis first instead? Even though I prefer Fry number one, is there a strategic advantage potentially to moving that vote to Dwayne Davis because my top priority is stopping Omar Fate?
So the scenario here is the person's preference is to not have a Fate victory.
Yeah.
But they would prefer Jacob Fry.
That's their one, but they don't think Fry can collect enough second and thirds to actually get a majority. And they believe Davis is like a compromise candidate who they can see him getting there because they think he'll collect enough Jazz Hampton votes. Like if you put Davis's first choices and like enough Fry people switch over and he collects some Jazz Hampton votes, maybe he's the one who can stop Fate. Is that reasonable?
I mean, the system works when people honestly rank their preferences. And so if this person really likes Fry as their top choice, they should be ranking Fry as their top choice. And they can put Davis as their second if that's the next person in line that they think would be suitable for the job. But there isn't like a gamesmanship you can play with trying to like eke out what other people are doing.
But if their vote ends with Fry,
right,
but Fry can never get to a majority, he's destined to be number two.
Yeah.
Is that like if you could see the future?
I understand what you're getting at, John. So like the candidate order in the end will matter, and potentially if there was somebody who had a better chance of winning than through the RCV ballots, then you could see that argument. But first of all, that requires you to accurately predict what everybody else in the city is going to do. And if we could do that, we wouldn't need to have elections at all. So I wouldn't have anyone put too much faith in their confidence in predicting what all the other voters in the city are going to do.
Well, I would suggest that all Jacob Fry voters consider this possibility and let it get deep in their minds and get extra strategic and overthink this. You probably should rank Dwayne Davis number one just to be safe, right?
Yeah. And since we can't do that, the most logical thing for people to do is to rank people in their order of their preference. The other thing I would say, John, and I'm not quite sure this is what you were suggesting, but if it is in fact true that if there is no chance somebody can get to a majority, that candidate will actually get eliminated.
Oh, really? So this is already accounted for in the way the votes are counted. So if this happens to Fry, where he can't get to number one, even though in the round in which people are eliminated, he may have more votes, he will still be eliminated?
So this is kind of fascinating because this actually happened in 2021. So in 2021, the order of first choice votes was Jacob Fry, Sheila Nejad, Kate Knuth. And then in batch elimination, everyone was eliminated except for Jacob Fry and Kate Knuth. And people will say, well, that doesn't make sense. Sheila had more votes than Kate. The reason Sheila was eliminated is there's two ways. So the first round, we do something called batch elimination. And this is to speed things up because in the old days, we would eliminate people one at a time. And there were like 35 people running for mayor and it took forever. And so after a while, the city was like, well, this is silly. Most of these people have like 5 votes. We can eliminate all of them at once. And so now there's 2 procedures for batch elimination. The first method is if you added up everybody below you, could you overtake the person above you? And you keep repeating that until you get to a point where theoretically that could happen. And what usually happens, of course, is you have like the top 3 or 4 cluster together and then everybody else way down at the bottom. So all those people at the bottom get eliminated right off the bat. There's also another method of elimination. So if you think about it, your first choice votes plus your second choice votes plus your third choice votes, right? That's all the people who voted for you. That is the most votes you could ever possibly have. You will never actually have that many because some of those votes are for people who haven't gotten eliminated, but that's the highest number of votes you could have. So if all of those votes added together isn't enough to overtake the person in the lead, you can't win. You mathematically cannot win. And that's what happened to Sheila Nejad. All of her votes added together were not possible to overtake Fry. If you added all of Kate's votes together, it was theoretically possible for her to overtake Fry. So Sheila got eliminated, Kate didn't. Now, of course, as we know, like in the end, Kate didn't surpass Fry. I think a lot of those second and third choice votes were Fry voters, so their votes never flowed through to her. But because she could have won and Sheila couldn't, Sheila was eliminated even though she had more first vote choice than Kate.
So if you had perfect knowledge of the end results, there still wouldn't be a reason not to rank Fry first, if that's your preference, to try to get like extra strategic as a way of stopping Fate. That just would never make sense.
I was going to say, if theoretically you had perfect knowledge of how everyone was going to vote and you had like a block of voters that you could order to vote how you wanted, then if you were trying to pick between a scenario where Fate wins or somebody else wins, a Davis or a Hampton, then theoretically you could potentially arrange votes for that to happen. But again, like nobody has that information. No one has close to that information. And so the best thing to do after all of that is to just rank your preferences honestly, because that's what the system is trying to find the candidate who is the broadest consensus candidate in an electorate. And so by honestly ranking, you're contributing your voice to what you would like the leadership of the city to look like. And if you start playing games with it, then you're probably only hurting yourself.
If Fry is number 2 in every round, is there a scenario where he would be eliminated because Davis just has more second and third choice votes? Is that what you were describing, Josh? That could happen?
So there's one. So in the first round, there's the batch elimination, and we eliminate people based on 2 criteria. If you plus all the candidates below you isn't enough to like bump you ahead of the person ahead of you, you're eliminated. And the other way you can get eliminated is if all of your votes added together are not enough to overtake the winner. So I guess let's say the results in election night are Fate number 1 in first choice votes, Fry number 2, and Fry, because not a lot of people are prioritizing him in ranked choice voting, like maybe he has a decent number of first choice votes, so he's in second place behind Fate, and then but he has like very few second and third choice votes. So like the total of all of those is not enough to launch him ahead of Fate. So in that scenario, he could be eliminated even though Davis is number 3. You could also imagine a scenario, of course, in which like the Jazz votes are enough to like leap Davis ahead of Fry. And I'm not saying either of these things is necessarily going to happen, but like these are things that could theoretically happen.
But if we think about it like from the perspective of the campaigns, like even if the Fry campaign, thinks it would be a nightmare if Fate was elected, the Fry campaign is not going around telling its people, you should vote for Davis first.
Right. Well, Jacob Fry cares first and foremost about Jacob Fry. He does not care about the fate of the city. We saw that at the convention. Like he screwed over his park board friends by evacuating the arena. So of course he's all out for himself. There's none of this like let's stop the DSA, even if I have to lose.
No, and I would say from ranked choice voting, like look at the way that the Fate, Davis, and Hampton campaigns are treating this. Like none of those campaigns are saying vote for this other guy first. They're all saying vote for me first, but rank these people second and third. And that's the way you approach ranked choice voting. You can't outsmart ranked choice voting. Like vote for your favorite candidate.
We're not
first.
at the end of the episode yet, Josh. What are you saying? We're saving the secrets to outsmarting ranked choice voting for the very end. Okay. That's my final question, and you all have answers prepared, right?
You're gonna end the show, and then you're gonna wait to see who stays on for the next 30 seconds, and then we're gonna have the actual secret.
Yeah, just keep listening, everyone. Keep listening. Is Jacob Frey terribly hurt by not having a coalition of Tom Hoke style candidates who are like, I really love Jacob Frey, you should definitely rank him too, but I differ with him on this or that thing, but we're just best friends? Is he hurt by not having a coalition of friends running with him?
I guess it would depend on the person that he recruits to be on his side. It's absolutely a strategy in a ranked choice voting environment to recruit candidates who are sort of allied together, so that maybe someone who isn't excited about Frey but is excited about Tom Hoke or some of these other people, that they would get drawn into the race where otherwise they wouldn't, and maybe they could be persuaded to put Jacob Frey as second. If they wouldn't have voted at all otherwise, then yeah, it could.
Is it a mistake? I guess this is a political question, but should they have done that? I know it's easy to say you should do that, but kind of hard to find people of stature who want to run a fake campaign to help you.
There's upsides and downsides. I think to having more candidates, even in ranked choice voting, like Todd said, if someone is not excited, especially in a municipal election, it can be hard to get them to turn out. And so if your only choice is somebody you're not very excited about, you might not show up. Now, on the other hand, let's say there's a candidate you're excited about, and there's also a candidate you're less excited about. Well, at this point, you're already there. You're already at the voting booth. You've done the hard part. Now it just takes you 5 seconds to fill in one more bubble for the candidate you're not as excited about. So that's kind of the advantage you can have to having those multiple options, and I think we're seeing that on the Frey challenger side. Some of the Fate voters, for example, I don't know if they would turn out for Jazz Hampton. But now that they're there, they might rank Jazz Hampton while they're there to vote for Fate. And I think Jazz Hampton's a great candidate too. I'm going to rank him on my ballot. I don't mean any shade on him, but I think there is a scenario there. And I think the same might go the other way. Some Jazz voters might not show up to vote for Omar Fate, but they're already there to vote for Jazz. While they're there, they might as well vote for Omar. So the other thing I was going to say is there can be some downsides too. You do kind of split media attention, you split money, you split focus and staff time and volunteers. We have ranked choice voting, but all of these other things that are a part of elections are still finite resources. And so that can make it a little bit more challenging to just add more candidates to the mix, even though in theory that makes sense.
Yeah, this is a political observation, but I think it makes it easier to paint. If they're all in coalition with the DSA candidates, they're all socialists. Even though if you pay any attention at all, these are very different candidates. Mm-hmm. It's not Team DSA, but it makes it easier for the Frey campaign to say, see all these socialists arrayed against me. They're all running together. They're all teaming up.
Well, everyone who doesn't agree with Jacob Frey is DSA.
That's true.
That's what all of Minneapolis has taught us.
If he is incapable of working with you, he promotes you to DSA. That's what he did to Emily Koski. Todd, you're a Ward 13 person, and Jazz has a lot of yard signs in Ward 13.
It's true. I bike with my daughter to school every day, and there's all up and down on the way to school. There's Jazz signs all up and down the streets.
My theory of the Jazz Hampton sign is that it's people who are ashamed to put Jacob Frey on their ballot. They will do it, but they want to be able to say, I'm for Jazz, then I will be for Jacob Frey, potentially.
Yeah, and I think if they're honestly ranking their preference that way, that's perfect. That's what the system is intended to do. It's to show that there is an appetite out there for a candidate who, whatever attributes, Jazz is bringing to the campaign that they prefer over the kind of campaign and leadership style that Frey's bringing. And so that'll come out in the, when the various eliminations are done. And if it turns out that Jazz is not successful in his run, at least they'll see that there was 10%, 15%. I don't know what the number is going to be, but like there was an appetite there for a candidate who wasn't as Fry-like as Fry is. And so in the next election, maybe there's a lane for that person to run. So I don't throw any shade at all on people who are, Jazz first and then Fry second. Like, it's not how I prefer that they vote, but it's absolutely like that's what ranked choice voting is there for. It's to let people express that preference that like, hey, I don't actually like the way Fry is governing the city, but Jazz is more in line with what I would like, and that's fine.
Here's an analysis question. Do you sense a softening of Jacob Fry's support in Ward 13? Is this something you're in a position to answer? Do you get out a lot and talk to people?
I try. I was at a house party for Davis last night. We had a lot of folks there. Several new Davis lawn signs popped up in our neighborhood after the event. I see a lot of Fate. Like, I was delivering Fate signs around the neighborhood around Ward 13 a couple of weeks ago. And so it feels like, I mean, we know yard signs don't vote, but at least as there are more non-Fry signs in our neighborhood than I would have expected, certainly more than 21 in 2021. So, and there is, in a lot of conversations I have, there are people who are still, very strong Fry supporters. But even among those, they have concerns with the way that he's been running the last 4 years or 8 years. And so I think there's opportunities out there for the candidates if they do some real, door-to-door interactions with some of these people that they can flip. They can change their minds.
This is a thing that I've had explained to me probably dozens of times, and I still don't understand how Park Board at Large works. I think it gets explained to me, I get it, and then I immediately forget it. So who wants to explain that? Who's good at explaining that?
So we're talking about the Park Board at Large.
Park Board at Large. Yeah, yep. There are 3 seats, but you only get 3 votes. You'd think 3 candidates, 3 seats. Shouldn't I get 9? Shouldn't I get 3 votes for each seat? But we don't. We only get 3 votes for 3 seats.
Yep, that's true. And the same philosophy behind ranked choice voting is the same in play here as it is with the 1-seat elections. So your goal is to just rank your preferences in order of the candidates that you'd like to see. And the way that works behind the scenes is that separate from all of the like batch elimination stuff that happens, but like in broad strokes, your first choices are all totaled up just like they are in a normal election. Anyone who exceeds the vote threshold to be elected, and so for in this case, since there's 3 candidates, it's 1/4, because if you get to a quarter of the a quarter plus 1 of the people, then if you get 3 people like that, then no one else can get elected from that point. So anyone who reaches that threshold of 1/4 of the number of votes plus 1 is automatically wins one of those seats. Maybe they win a lot more votes than that, right? And so like maybe they win twice as many. Maybe they win 50% of the votes that are out there to sort of compensate people for voting for a candidate who had way more votes than they needed. The fraction of votes that are left over from the ones needed to elect that candidate, we get to look at those second choice votes that the people made for that candidate and sort of distribute them to their other choices, to their second choice and then their third choice. So you get, maybe 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 votes, one to your main choice if they win, and then, a fraction of a vote that goes down to the other people. If your first choice doesn't get elected, if they don't have enough votes, then that just goes to your second choice like a normal ranked choice voting does. There's just that little extra piece where they like try to make up for the fact that some people might get way more votes than they need to be elected. And so you sort of get a refund on some fraction of your vote. But
how do they decide the fraction?
So the fraction how do I explain this? It's easiest with like, if you need 25% and you get 50%, then you only needed to spend half of your vote to get that person elected. And so you'd get another half back to send on your second choice. Okay. If that makes sense.
If somebody's right at the threshold, to the 25% plus 1,
yep.
Then what happens to the second and third? So those will not be redistributed in that case?
So you will not, you've expressed your full preference for voting in that case. And so the second and third choice seats will have to be redistributed based on, like, you'll look at the person who got the fewest votes and redistribute their second choice votes to other people. And I suppose there is a possibility that like the votes that are redistributed from a person who has been eliminated will get distributed to the person who's already got a seat, and then that would get cascaded back down to their third choice vote. So there's a lot going on underneath the hood. The same mechanism, the same philosophy applies here. It's just like rank your honest choices, and everything gets sorted out.
That's all right. I don't want to disagree with anything Todd said. The thing I would add is that because of this feature, this system of ranked choice voting introduces an element of proportional representation, which is an intentional feature of this system of ranked choice voting. So because you only need to get a quarter of the votes, this helps ensure that it's kind of weird with park board. I think this was designed more for like legislative systems, but it's intended to represent that like a minority group, an interest group, can still get their preferences represented as opposed to the majority controlling all of the seats. Now, on the other hand, that also means that as a result, it's very unlikely that any one side is gonna dominate all of the seats. So there's 3 seats for park board. As you like to say, John, we have 2 political parties in Minneapolis. I think that's true in the park board as well. So odds are, unless one side just like completely mops the floor with the other and is winning like 76% of the vote or something, odds are one of the factions will get 2 of the seats and the other faction will get 1 of the seats.
I know how this happens because I've seen it happen before. If Jacob Fry evacuates all of his voters, if he senses he's going to lose and evacuates all of his voters out of the city to try to deny quorum. Right? That way the progressives could win all 3 at-large seats on the park board.
Yeah, generally that is a tactic that is used in conventions. I've never seen that before in an election. I've never seen someone try to do that
by evacuating all your voters. Say, no, doesn't count. You can't do this. My voters were all on vacation that day.
Yeah.
No? He's welcome to try. If it comes down to it.
I would encourage Jacob Fry to try that strategy and see how that works out for him.
The only I guess additional wrinkle for some of these multi-seat elections is like if we wanted to bring it to if we've wrapped up on the park board, if we want to bring it to like the BET, in that case,
is there a different way BET works? How does BET work?
No, it's absolutely the same system. But as far as the order that people might rank their candidates in, you want to be honest with the rankings as far as like who you would most like to see in those seats, because odds are, just like with the park board, you're maybe going to get at if you're going to get 1, maybe 2, but not all 3. And so like whichever of the, like on the BET.
Well, there are only 2 BET seats.
Yeah, it's true.
I've heard people say things like, well, Tom Olson is definitely going to win, therefore I'm voting for some other. I don't operate this way. Tom Olson, he has bled every day for 4 years on this park board, and he is my first choice. First in my heart always is Tom Olson, and I'm not going to play games with my Parks at Large vote by putting anyone else first. It's Tom Olson. Is that a valid strategy, though, to like, well, I know this person is definitely going to win, therefore I am lifting up this other lesser candidate into my number 1 slot?
This kind of ties back to our previous conversation about like if you had perfect knowledge about how everyone was going to vote, then maybe a conversation like this could come into play. But we absolutely don't. And so if Tom Olson is your number 1 choice, then absolutely you want to rank that person first, regardless of whether like you think he's going to get an overwhelming number of votes or not.
So can we scold the people who do this? Because I think a lot of people do this.
I don't. Scold is a harsh word. I would say that like we want to spread the gospel of ranking your choices honestly. Like that's if you really want Tom Olson as your number 1 and you'd be heartbroken the day after election day if he was not elected, you want to put that guy as your number 1.
Yeah, everyone you should be ranking Tom Olson number 1. None of these games, just because you think Tom Olson is Superman and can't be defeated, you gotta rank him number 1 if that's what you believe.
Well, people might also be ranking, for example, people who are ranking Tom Olson also might rank, for example, Michael Wilson number 1 because Michael Wilson is their number 1 choice and they're happy to rank Tom Wilson number 2. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I have heard people say I don't need to rank Tom Olson number 1 for like strategic math reasons because I think he's going to win.
You just ask that person what they think is going to happen if everyone followed that same strategy.
Right. Yeah.
Like if everyone did what they are recommending, Tom Olson would not get any votes.
And this is kind of the problem with trying to outsmart ranked choice voting, because once you start to do these things, then like a lot of these strategies, like the more people that do them, the less likely it is that it will work. And if you think about that, that's probably not a good way to try to accomplish something.
I'm going to say this over and over in this podcast. Rank your choices honestly. That's the best way to guarantee you get the outcome that you'll be happy with.
There was no reason for us to be here then, if it's not complicated.
There is a reason though, because like you both said, you've talked to people who have suggested strategies other than ranking your preferences honestly, and I think especially I have a what's the word? I have a vested interest in the people on my side of things, like voting honestly so that we get the outcome that we're looking for. I don't want people playing games with, trying to second guess what other people are going to do or anything like that. So you
tend to run into two issues people have with ranked choice voting. Either they just hate it and they refuse to do it and they're just like, no, I'm just going to vote for one candidate and I don't believe in this ranked choice voting hooey. Or there's people who just like try to like beautiful mind and they're like, I'm going to crack the code of ranked choice voting. If I do it this way, then I'll beat the system. And you can't do either of those things. The best strategy is for you to rank the candidates in the order of your preference. The only caveat I would add to that makes it a little more complicated is if there are races with more than 4 candidates. So you can only rank 3 candidates, right? Which means effectively if there are 4 candidates, the system works perfectly because you get number 1, number 2, number 3, and you don't rank the 4th person. If there are more than 4 candidates, then it can get a little more complicated because if you, for example, for mayor where there's like 17 people running, we all know who the big 4 candidates are, right? Jacob Fry, Omar Fateh, Jazz Hampton, Dwayne Davis, and I will predict right now with absolute certainty that next year one of those 4 men will be our mayor. With varying degrees of probability, but it's going to be one of those 4 is going to win. And so if you vote for someone who is not one of those 4,
throwing your vote away, Josh. You're scolding people for throwing their votes away.
And people like, might criticize this, but like this is what happens when you don't have ranked choice voting too, except then you have to choose between 2 people. At least with this system, you get to choose between 4. Theoretically, we could have more rankings and then you could have more choices, but this is the numbers we've got under the system we have in Minneapolis. So if you are looking at one of the handful of races that there are more than 3 candidates, and there aren't very many races in the city like that. I think it's like mayor, Ward 5 city council, at-large park board. I think that's it. Then do some research on which of these candidates like seems to be plausibly going into the final round and try to confine your choices to that. If you really love one of the long shots, go ahead and rank them for your first choice. That's kind of what ranked choice voting is for, but like don't fill your ballot with all long shots.
Probably don't fill your ballot with any long shots. It is just limit your mayoral votes at least to these
mayor
top
especially
4.
Yeah, top
not
4.
Charlie McLeod, not the guy who threatens to execute people at the candidate forums, not any of the cast of clowns candidates.
To kind of reframe what Josh just said, you get your 3 rankings and then everyone below that you're functionally indifferent between. Like you would be perfectly fine or equally happy or unhappy with any of the rest of them. And if that's true, then you've got your honest ranking. But if you really do have a preference among, some of the big 4, you want to at least rank a couple of them so you can express that preference so that gets accounted for. Absolutely. If you have 3 long shots that are those are your honest preferences, then I would say vote for them. Just be aware that, you're unlikely, you're basically letting everyone else have a voice in the other 4. And that's fine. Like, right. If I have my ranked choice voting advocate hat on, that is the correct thing to do.
And in Mayor, this kind of gets expressed in 2 ways. There's some people who are just like, my one candidate or bust. Usually, often it's Fry in this election. Or they're like, and the other thing we're seeing a lot in this election is I really don't like Jacob Fry or Omar Fateh. And that's fine. You can rank Dwayne number 1 and Jazz number 2. But there's I think a very real possibility that it's going to come down to Jacob Fry and Omar Fateh in the final round. And if you're somebody who doesn't like either of those candidates, that's unsettling, but that may still be reality. So you may actually need to decide which of these candidates do I dislike less.
Right. It may not feel good, but this is the choice. If you want to have a voice and a choice, then you need to pick between those 2 candidates. Okay, should we get to... I have been canceled on Blue Sky because of this poll. It's the very official Wedge Live mayoral poll, which was only intended to inform our discussion of the mechanics of ranked choice voting, but also I brought up my larger philosophy about we don't need to talk about the cast of clown candidates who are not, very obviously not running real campaigns. Voters have limited attention spans. I'm going to go on a rant. And why do we want to overload them? I didn't interview 15, 20 mayoral candidates on the podcast because it would be a disservice to voters to waste their time with it. Nobody would listen. It would kill me. I don't have the energy for that. And shame on the one person who canceled me for not including more candidates in the official Wedge Live poll. Are we ready for it, Todd? Do we know what we're going to do with this?
Well, I mean, the people have voted. I feel like they should at least get a chance to hear what the Wedge Live audience, yeah.
And these are the overall results. What we see is that Jazz Hampton is overwhelming the field with third choice votes. If third choices were first choices, Jazz Hampton is mayor on the first round. But
so let's provide just a little bit of context for this. So you put a poll out there for asking, Blue Sky Space what their...
And Twitter. This went out to Twitter too.
Oh, fantastic.
And Threads. The 2 people who read Wedge Live on Threads, this went out to them too.
Yeah, so we wanted to just
on Threads.
We wanted to use this poll as a mechanism for sort of demonstrating how the mechanics of ranked choice voting would work. I think a lot of folks, not a lot, a few people got upset that we didn't include all of the candidates, but for the very good reasons that you listed, it's exhausting to try and I didn't. You mentioned some of these people. I don't even know who these people were that were running. So from a voting perspective, it wasn't necessary to include them in this. We're just trying to demonstrate how the mechanisms of ranked choice voting work, how the eliminations work, how votes get transferred, and all that. And no one is expecting this to be a realistic portrayal of the electorate. Given the sample size and the audience.
You're not saying this is a realistic percentage of Jacob Fry in 2025?
What numbers did he get out of
37 votes out of 521 responses?
I can wish we lived in that world, but I don't think that's what the...
What does that say? Here's an analysis question. What does it say about the Wedge Live audience that you all live in a bubble where Jacob Fry only gets 37 out of 521 votes? That's not real. Why can't you all be more like the larger and more representative of the larger electorate?
It was totally up to them to sniff out that this was happening and bombard us with bots and trolls and all kinds of people to overwhelm our numbers. I wasn't checking to make sure people weren't voting twice. I'm sure people did. I wasn't checking to see that people weren't living in Minneapolis.
That's true. Yeah. There may be voter fraud here.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Erlinson is running to the state executive committee to get these results thrown out because honestly, you can vote as many times as you want in the official Wedge Live poll. Do we want to go to
maybe
our...
Jacob Fry evacuated his delegates from this poll, like you were talking about.
That's right, Mike Erlinson. The only reason these are so lopsided is Jacob Fry heard the official Wedge Live poll was coming, and he evacuated all of his people from the city so they couldn't participate. Should we look at a graphic?
Yeah, for sure. So there's this great visualization. It's called a Sankey diagram. That's sort of looking at the bar chart doesn't like it shows you who got a certain number of first choice rankings, but we couldn't determine from this who won the election. And so there's this fun thing called a Sankey diagram that sort of shows the flow of how people's votes get redistributed after a candidate is eliminated. Yeah. So this is the audience poll, and so the way you can sort of parse this out is that the time progresses from left to right. And so you can see everybody's first choice votes in the first round ordered by candidate, with Dwayne Davis at the top, Omar Fateh, Jazz Hampton, Jacob Fry. And so you can see sort of at the bottom there, Jacob Fry in the audience poll got the fewest number of first place votes of 38, followed by 43 by Jazz, 221 by Omar Fateh, and 218 by Dwayne Davis. And so Jacob Fry, since he has the fewest number of votes, his votes get redistributed to his voters' second choice. So in this sampling, most of those went to Jazz Hampton. And so if we look at the sort of second column now of the second number of votes there, Dwayne Davis still has 224, also 224 by Omar Fateh, and then Jazz Hampton's 57. So Jazz is now the lowest number of has the lowest number of votes among the candidates. So he is eliminated, and then his candidates' votes are distributed to their second choice or third choice as appropriate. And once we do that, then we see that Dwayne Davis ends up with 64 votes to Omar Fateh's 234. And so in this scenario, Dwayne Davis would be elected mayor of the city.
Do we think this is... I'm looking at Jacob Fry's distribution after he's eliminated, and some people, it looks like a little less than half didn't have choices. Like they didn't fill out their entire ballot. Am I reading that correctly?
Well, what we've been hearing anecdotally is that a lot of Fry people are not ranking a second choice. I think because they're very confident Fry's going to be in the top two, or they just don't like anybody else. Like, I don't know what it is.
That's bizarre.
But that's what I've been hearing. And we also saw Jazz Hampton actually released a poll recently which showed similar results, that a lot of Fry voters are exhausting their ballots.
Is there a competitive reason to do that, or is that just a spiteful choice? So
with the way ranked choice voting actually works, there's no reason to do this. The best case scenario is that it doesn't hurt anything, but it doesn't help anything. Because if they're right and Fry ends up in the top two at the end, then it won't matter who they rank second or third. But it won't help anything either. It's not hurting them by ranking somebody second or third. But the worst case scenario, like, a lot of Fry supporters are pretty sure, I'm even pretty sure, that Fry will probably finish in the top two, but I can't say that with certainty. Like, there's a possibility that Fry doesn't finish in the top two. And if those Fry voters don't rank a second and third choice in that case, then they're not expressing a preference on the candidates who do end up in the top two. And in that scenario, most likely, I would guess that means they're not expressing a preference on Omar Fateh or Dwayne Davis. And I would guess that a lot of Fry voters, even though they probably would not want either of those candidates to be mayor, they might have a preference between those two candidates in the situation that Jacob Fry can't be mayor.
Because Jazz Hampton's voters are ranking their ballot, as far as I can tell from this. Maybe it's not zoomed in enough.
All three of the other candidates have been.
I guess there's some that aren't.
Yeah, you're never going to get 100%. There's always going to be some exhaustion. But all three of the other candidates have been very explicitly telling people, like we talked about earlier, vote me number one, but vote both of these other people 2 and 3. So I think you will see not 100%, but you will see fewer exhausted ballots from Dwayne Davis, Omar Fateh, and Jazz Hampton voters.
Well, there you have it. The Wedge Live USA Today coaches poll predicts that Dwayne Davis is your next mayor of Minneapolis.
Now, yeah, so we discussed that maybe Jacob Fry coming in a distant fourth is not the best prediction will happen in this election. So, Todd, do you have a few other hypothetical scenarios for us of what might happen in the real election?
I do. I took it upon myself to I came up with different voter categories of the friendly Fatés, the friendly Davises, the people who are on board with the rank 3 for change, and then the ride or die Fries, and the never Fateh people. I tried to come up with sort of categories of the electorate and arrange the proportions so that what would it take for each of our four leaders, what would it take for them to win the election. And so I have those scenarios that are they're probably not this slide. This is from
looks like convention.
That's the convention
numbers.
Not,
these are hypothetical convention numbers?
No, these are. I took the convention numbers as best I could from the DFL, the city convention, just to
this is how it would have played out?
This is with some assumptions on how people would vote and what the first round vote totals were. Omar Fateh did get about 44% in the first round, Jacob Fry 32, Davis 20 or 19. Unfortunately.
This also kind of works out as a pretty good illustration of what a potential Fateh win might look like.
And I have this is one example. I have one for each of the different candidates. So this is
Jazz wins.
Yeah,
Jazz wins.
Which we can start with if we want. I think
Let's start with Jazz wins.
Yeah, he has sort of the narrowest path, but what he needs to have happen is that he needs Jacob Fry to get eliminated and have a sizable chunk of the Fry voters have Hampton as their second choice. And I'm not saying this is a likely or plausible scenario, but I think it is the most likely path that Jazz Hampton has to a victory. That
seems like a high proportion of Fry voters ranking their ballot.
It does, and I will use this. I will use this as a chance to extend an olive branch to the Fry camp, the Fry campaign, and the Fry voters. That you are weakening your voice by not putting a preference for second or third choice, because we live in uncertain times and we don't know an event that might happen in the city where the support for Jacob Fry falls out the bottom and all of a sudden it's anybody's race. And so they're, for the people that are voting early or anything like that, you're going to want to have expressed a preference between the other three, because I guarantee you have one.
Yeah. So. Jazz Hampton is a lawyer and an entrepreneur, and he has an app. What is not to like, Fry voters?
It speaks to a lot of people.
Okay, this one is Fry wins.
Yeah, so this is sort of in a sort of rightward leaning electorate where you have, a fair chunk of people just right out the bat going for Jacob Fry. All of the negative campaigning and things that's, out there, does its work. Some sizable chunk of, Jazz Hampton and Dwayne Davis voters goes to Jacob Fry, and in the end, Omar Fateh is not able to squeak it out. So this is one scenario that could happen. It's pretty straightforward. He just goes into it with more support, and no one else is able to stop him.
This Fateh wins.
The Fateh win is sort of it's very similar to what we were talking about for the convention. So it's the rank 3 for change coalition holds strong. Most of the people that vote for Jazz Hampton or Dwayne Davis first, their votes cascade into Omar Fateh, either, at some point. And he's able, coming from a strong, more or less even starting point from Jacob Fry, he's able to leverage his, coalition partners' votes into enough to put him over the top.
What do polls show the Fateh versus Fry numbers to actually be at? Roughly what range are these candidates operating in those polls?
The more recent Minneapolis for the Mini poll had Jacob Fry 34%, Omar Fateh 29%, Dwayne Davis 10%, Jazz Hampton 5%, other 5% undecided 17%. And then the Jazz Hampton poll, just for illustration purposes, I'll just go with the all voters one. That one had Jacob Fry 34%, Omar Fateh 33%, Dwayne Davis 9%, Jazz Hampton 6%, 5% other, 13% unsure.
Aside from the Davis, I mean the Fate Fry number in that poll is close to what Todd has here.
So this is, I mean, I think this is, a very reasonable scenario of how Omar Fateh wins. I think it's, it's going to be a coalition effort coming from leveraging that rank 3 for change strategy. And I think, I think it'll pay off if this is the kind of outcome that they're looking for.
Back to the question about Fry voters exhausting their ballots. So there is no strategic advantage for an individual voter in not ranking your ballot. So somebody pointed out to me, though, there might be an advantage for a campaign to not talk about ranked choice voting.
That's what I was getting at. What is that advantage?
So if you talk to voters about ranked choice voting and you talk to voters about our options, you are making it more likely that they will rank these other candidates second and third, but you also run the risk that maybe they look into some of those other candidates and they rank one of those other candidates first. Maybe you hadn't heard of Dwayne Davis or Jazz Hampton before, and then you start researching them and you're like, oh man, I actually like these guys more than Jacob Fry. I might rank them first. That would be the risk the Fry campaign would run. And so that's kind of what often ends up being a problem with ranked choice voting, is it's kind of a collective action problem. Theoretically, all the campaigns in a particular side should work together. They're actually all slightly decreasing the chance that any given one of them will win, because they all have that same issue. But they're increasing the chances collectively that one of the three of them will win. Now, of course, when you have three candidates working together like that, hopefully it balances out. Like, yes, maybe Fateh loses some first choice voters to Dwayne, or Dwayne loses some first choice voters to Fateh, but it all comes out in the wash. When you have a candidate who's at least in their minds the front runner, and you don't have these natural coalition partners, it might not come out in the wash as much. So that's the potential psychological reason why you might not want to talk about ranked choice voting. And like you said, John, it comes back to this, that they only care about Jacob Fry. If Jacob Fry loses, they don't care what happens.
Right.
That's where Jacob Fry is at.
And that's at a campaign level. So we, the voters, we the people, the people who want to express our voting preferences, we absolutely want to have all those choices and to have the ability to express
Correct.
those.
Yes. To be clear,
So,
there's no advantage to a voter in not ranking all their preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And voters, if you're hearing this from the Fry campaign, they don't care about you. They don't want you to exercise your choices. That's a real shame. It's anti-democratic, and it shortchanges you in the end.
Don't let them be the gatekeepers of which candidates you can consider on your ballot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here is Davis wins.
Yeah, so Davis, this one I sort of had to model as some of the outreach work that I know he's doing right now sort of pays off, that the support for Fry is weaker than expected, that Fateh does well in the first round, but that for whatever reason a lot of the some of the Jazz Hampton support goes to Dwayne Davis, and it's enough to put him over the top in that second round so that he actually has more than Fateh does in that second round. And then in that scenario, it's very likely that a large chunk of the Fateh supporters have Dwayne Davis as their second choice. And so that, cascade of votes is more than enough to put him over the top over Jacob Fry. This is a kind of lopsided example, but I think even in, more marginal cases, I think this is the path, is that one way or another, Omar Fateh doesn't make it past the second round, and because of the rank 3 for change strategy, many, I won't say all, but many of the people who have voted for Fateh first would have Dwayne Davis as their second, so that's enough to put him over the top. So this is a plausible scenario, I think, and the one that I think the Davis camp is probably counting on as their path to victory. I don't think it's as narrow as the Hampton path to victory, but I think it's, you'd have to, it'll be interesting to see if it goes this way.
So at what percentage in these polls should Jacob Fry be scared to death? That because where are the rankings, the lower rankings, going to come to push him up into a majority? Josh,
Well, I think they're not. Like most people, most Fateh voters are not ranking Fry. Most Dwayne voters are not ranking Fry. There was a theory for a while that Jazz Hampton voters might rank Fry over other candidates, but Jazz's own poll that he puts out shows that that's not even true. Even the Jazz voters are not preferring Fry to other candidates on the anti-Fry slate. So I think, like, certainly he'll get some. Like, I'm not saying he will get, but it sounds like with all three of the anti-Fry candidates, more votes than not will go to a candidate who is not Jacob Fry. Now, there are other candidates on the ballot, and we talked about how that doesn't matter a whole lot, but if the election is very close, that could matter. So, for example, if you're a Laverne Turner voter, probably your second choice is Jacob Fry, because that's the next best you have of your options. And Fry actually did pretty well in 2021, for example, among the second choices of the people who were not Sheila Najad or Kate Knuth. So you could see something similar happening this year, where if the results were very close, then those votes might be enough to save him. But there's not a lot of those votes. So if it does get into a situation where Fry is in first place at the end of the first round, but just by a little bit, or worse yet, like he's in second place at the end of the first round, like he's probably in a very bad position at that point.
The chart for the 2021 election actually shows that really well. If you wanted to switch over to that,
we'll switch to that.
Sure.
Yeah, so you can see, so all the sort of also ran candidates are down there at the bottom, and like a very large chunk of them, you know, if they have a second choice at all, they did sort of cascade up more to Jacob Fry than they did to anyone else. A lot of them got exhausted too, so it means a lot of those folks just they voted for their one person, and that was it. They were done. So, but that number of people that were exhausted was more than the difference between Jacob Fry and Kate Knuth in the end. And so, like, the people who are only ranking, you know, one person, a long shot candidate, and then nothing else, like, all of you collectively had enough to swing that race if you wanted to. So,
right.
It's worth investigating.
I mean,
what this also
Marcus Harkis, his name rhymes. Why wouldn't you vote for Marcus Harkis? Honey Badger Atkins, that's a fun name. Why wouldn't you show up to vote for him?
I'm just saying, like, all the people who voted for the long shots in 2021, like this chart shows you actually collectively have a lot of power, and so if you have any preference among the second or third choices in that race, like, you should rank them.
But you can also see here that, like, how little Jacob Fry support grew, right? So, like, Sheila and Kate, like, almost formed one candidate at the end of this, whereas Jacob Fry just picked up these small votes from these other candidates. So again, this goes to show that, like, Fry has a high floor, I think, but a low ceiling. So if you run into this scenario again, like, Fry won here because his first choice votes were so dominant that it didn't matter. But if you run into a scenario where Fry's first choice votes sag a little bit compared to 2021, or if there's higher turnout among supporters for other candidates and that margin is smaller, then Fry's probably in real danger because he doesn't have a lot of room to grow beyond that.
This emphasizes to me a significant minority of people are just voting at random. Like, Sheila to Fry, what is going on there? And I don't know. Marcus Harkis, Bob again? You're really voting for Bob again?
Yeah, and I saw this in the Jazz's poll too. There were people who were, like, voting Yeah, who were like, there were it was Fry votes that went to Fateh as their second choice, and people were like, what, like, why, how does that make sense? And I think, maybe things will change between now and election day, but I think what it is simply is a lot of voters are not paying as close attention as we are, and Jacob Fry and Omar Fateh are simply the only two names they have heard of, so
I've heard of them.
Those two in some order.
I have heard those names. I will vote for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of math that goes on behind the scenes, but like ultimately for us as voters, what matters is just ranking our preferences. Honestly, there's no cheating the system. There's no gaming the system. Even if you got together with all your buddies, like there's no way you can try to outsmart this. Like just rank your preferences honestly. Who would you most like to see on the day after election day be our mayor or our park board people, and then second choice and then third choice, and then that's your vote. Like don't need to overcomplicate it.
And my message to my fellow ranked choice voting truthers is if you love a candidate, vote for them 3 times in a row. It really can melt steel beams. To my RCV truthers, we can melt steel beams with our votes. And if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. Josh, do you have final thoughts?
I'll just reiterate what Todd said. Rank the candidates in your order of preference. The end.
Okay. Well, thank you, Todd Schuman, and thank you, Josh Martin. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
So just be ready. Where are you going, Josh? Oh, did your thing fall over?
Things are falling apart over here.